What's up, ninjas and ninjas, and welcome to the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim, head ninja at Exposure Ninja and best-selling digital marketing author. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonny Ross. Now, Jonny Ross has got a really interesting story, starting way back when he was part of a team that built one of the UK's first and largest online glasses retailers. So he's going to take us through that experience and what that was like, right up to the current day where he's helping people to be more strategic on social media. So he's going to give us some tips on how to do that and not just tweet for the sake of it. So strap in and enjoy. Welcome to the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. This week, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonny Ross, who's a bit of an SEO and social media guru. Jonny, you've got a pretty interesting background, haven't you? I want to talk today about being strategic with social media, but first, maybe you could give us a bit of an intro into who you are and how you got here.
Well, I'm a qualified optician, actually. It gives me all the credibility in the world to be talking about social media, doesn't it? No. So I set up, I had an optician's on the high street for about 12 years. We set up an e-commerce store selling sunglasses back in 99, so it was quite early on. And we knew from our buying power for the first 4 or 5 years that we were one of the biggest sunglass e-tailer, not just from our buying power, but we were at the top of Google for pretty much everything from sunglasses, designer sunglasses, to red sunglasses, Armani sunglasses, every single brand you could think of. But in 2004, sales dropped, didn't really know why. It took us a month to realize that we were no longer at the top of Google. You didn't look at things like Google Analytics and ranks quite as much as you do back in 2004. So we engaged with an SEO agency to try and get the problem solved. And in the end, 2 SEO agencies later, 18 months later, and some serious thousands of pounds, we were still on page 7 of Google. Google had given us a penalty, and these 2 SEO agencies over 18 months couldn't solve why. So for even our brand name, we were still on page 7. It was all a bit of a disaster. I, in the end, found a guy in New York who was on a ridiculous hourly rate. But within about 2 weeks, he solved the problem and got us back to page 1 of Google. So we learned a massive amount, became really frustrated with the SEO industry. I certainly did. I was a minority shareholder of the business, and we'd lost a lot of traction over the 18 months. It needed a big investment. It wasn't forthcoming, so I decided to go off and really show businesses how SEO is actually just a bit of common sense. That's how I got into this.
Love that. So I'm really interested in how you built the optician brand in the first place then. So it sounds like until 2004, you didn't have a huge amount of in-house SEO expertise at that company. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It was lots of reading and lots of, I've always followed bloggers, and it was just lots of different techniques that people were suggesting, and we were trying everything, and it was working. And everything that we were trying, we came across that I was reading was the right things to be doing. That's how you played the Google game. And so one of the examples, and it's amazing that in 2004, 2 respected SEO agencies didn't believe that hidden text on a web page was an issue. And they believed that actually, no, it was quite normal to have hidden text on a web page, and that wouldn't be causing the problem. And so some of it was real common sense if you look back at it now, but there was probably about 20 or 30 different reasons. So to be fair, that I've picked up on a common sense one there. But going back prior to that, how we built the brand, we were an early adopter. We were first there. We had an amazing web developer. And so for the time, it was sort of groundbreaking web development. And we had the source, we had the product. So it was a business. We had, typically in a business, you need finance, you need product, and then you need sales and marketing. We had the finance, we had the product, we had the website, and we had the ability, because no one else was doing it. It was very soon that you had the likes of ShadeStation and Debenhams going online, and there was some. There was a one called the Sunglass Shop, I think it was, who became a serious competitor. But we were sort of ahead of the game, and it was lots of reading.
So you were kind of first into that market, or the first to, I guess, take that seriously, and then did your competitors use that penalization 2004 to get ahead, and then it became a game that you couldn't compete with? What was the deal there?
That was exactly what the issue was, and it needed investment to then take it over. The senior partner wasn't wanting to invest and had other priorities at the time. And there'd been 18 months where things internally had changed vastly because we lost 40% of our turnover during that time. So there was a big shift. But it was the whole way through those first 4 or 5 years. It was not just ahead as in the first to do it, but ahead as in understanding the techniques of what was SEO at the time.
Mm. And what did that business look like when it was top of the market? What, day to day, what was it? Do you have revenue numbers that you're happy to share? Like how big was this thing?
Oh, you're going back quite a while, and it's not something I've talked about for quite a while either. I mean, we were selling. I think we were selling maybe 100 pieces a day. There was some serious volume going through the business at that time. Again, buying online, it was very early on. And so to be doing that type of volume for a product that typically is a very touchy-feely product, if you went back to that time, it was a product typically that you could only buy. We were selling things like Chanel, things like Oakley, where you could only buy in selected dealers. And typically you'd go to that dealer because you'd want to then see the entire range before you purchased. So it was, to be selling that sort of volume was also quite impressive.
Yeah, I guess today, if you're ranking top of Google for those phrases around sunglasses, you'd be expecting like high 4-5 figures of sales volume a day. But I guess back then,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm not sure about 4 or 5 figures, but at the time, that business was doing the same revenue more than one of our average high street practices. It was a serious business.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. And then you transitioned out of that and then started your own SEO agency, right? And you did that because you observed the swamp that was SEO in the 2000s.
Absolutely. It was it was a minefield and lots and lots of opinion, and it was this sort of black hat and grey hat and cloak and dagger. Give us 500 quid. We're going to do some stuff. We're not going to tell you what it is, and we'll get you higher in Google. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For me, I hate to say this for any estate agents listening, but it was the estate agent industry, and it was just a really bad industry. And for me, I saw an opportunity of just saying, do you know what? This is just common sense. Just think about who Google are, what they're trying to achieve, and a lot of this is just common sense. And so there was a very big opportunity throughout the time that I didn't translate straight away in 2004. It took me another 5 years to move, actually. So I had about 11 years experience on the sunglass side. And throughout that time, I learned a massive amount, created a network of freelancers, but also the SEO became a passion in 2005, and I couldn't get enough of it. And I wanted to know exactly what was going to make a difference, but also what's going to trigger a penalty. So I started creating websites purely to try and trigger a penalty and see what really pushed Google just too far, to try and understand how far you could push these grey hat techniques, for example. Lots of collaborating with other SEO people around the world, and just general learning, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Exactly the same reason I got into SEO.
Really?
I was just seeing the amount, at the time I was working with a lot of tradesmen, and seeing the amount of money that they were giving to people who were talking just absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
It's
frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, especially when you see. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to get this podcast often turns into a rant against low quality SEO, and I've seen some this week that's particularly fresh in my mind. So anyway, I guess one of the main things I wanted to talk about today was strategy and social media, and I don't know if you agree, but it feels to me like social media is in a similar kind of place to SEO was maybe 2010 or so, when there'd started to become some best practice, but there's still a lot of uncertainty around it. People really still aren't sure. I think, talking about strategy with social, most people are just heading on to Facebook and Twitter and posting when they can or when they remember, getting a few likes here and there, and there's no real intent behind it.
No.
How can people start thinking about this in a more strategic way that ties in with genuine business goals?
Yeah, no, well, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's no point doing it unless it doesn't tie in. In most cases, it's a scattergun approach, and that can be for any size of business, even working with some serious corporates. I'm never amazed by some of the ways that social is dealt with, and it typically the reason simply is because in a lot of cases, certainly in bigger companies, senior boards just don't buy into social, and it's sort of just a tick box in a way, and then you've got marketing departments that are left to their own devices, but also nothing's integrated with what the board's really wanting. And if you then go to small businesses, it's the sort of the opposite side of the coin, where time is precious. You've been told that Twitter is the place to be, and that's where you're going to get all your magic business from. And so you spend an enormous amount of time tweeting all day. and then sort of 6 months later think, well, what is it working? I don't know. I don't know. Is it working? I don't know. And so it is about having a plan and being really strategic. And to be fair, you've highlighted it. It's about going back to what are we trying to achieve? And so forgetting social, what are the business goals? What are the objectives? And can they be tangible? Can they be numbers? So, what are we trying to achieve over the next 12 months, over the next 2 years, 3 years? But also, can we be specific? So instead of, we want to increase our revenue, who is going to be buying from us? And that's the really important part, the who bit, because it's no longer business to business or business to consumer. It's people to people. And ultimately, someone is physically making a decision, and it's a person. So it's about trying to drill down to who that person is and coming up with some kind of persona. And that would be with a bit of research and looking at your previous clients, looking at the typical types of people that have bought from you in the past or that do buy from you. And it's about then, if you can then, in a way, pigeonhole them by coming up with some kind of persona, it then gives you the ability to be able to talk to them. Because social is nothing more than talking to people. And so you've really got to identify what the goals are, who's going to then buy those to achieve that, and therefore who the target audience is, because that is the most important part. And it's not until you've created that that you can really be using social. So, for example, we do a lot of work with schools. And knowing schools very well, they don't believe that anyone that doesn't do anything to do with schools can do anything for schools. So if they were looking for a new website, or even if they were looking for an electrician, they would Google something like electrician for schools or school electrician, because they don't believe that a standard electrician could come into a school. And it's just the way they think. It's very similar in the NHS as well. And so that's just one very good example. If I sell websites and I just say, we sell websites for everyone, then that's not going to hit the schools market. Whereas if we create a page talking about school websites, case study about school websites, talk in their language, talk about half term, talk about Ofsted, talk about all sorts of different school related things, we're suddenly talking in their language. They suddenly have a lot more of assumption about our understanding and our capability of working in that sector. What it doesn't do is it doesn't stop other people buying from us. Just because we're talking in a school language on a particular web page or on a particular social platform doesn't suddenly mean that other people aren't going to buy from us for that reason. So it's not going to stop people buying from you, but it's about being very targeted so that all the time spent is worth it. And that can make the biggest difference. And it's not about just having one persona. You might have 3, 5, 10 personas. but it's about identifying those personas.
That's really interesting, and I think particularly interesting. One of the things that triggered in my head when you're talking about these personas is, if you look at a lot of the millennial influencers on social media, whether it's in fitness, whether it's someone like gaming with KSI, or someone like iJustine, who was one of the original YouTubers, if you look at how they'll often use their social media, they'll often have different personas as well. So they might have a style channel on YouTube or a style page on Instagram. They might have a fitness thing. They might have a reviews thing. So even the original P2P social media marketers are starting to identify that they've got different sub niches in their audiences, and that actually different messages work for different types. How much of these personas that businesses need to develop is actually, one person in the company stepping up and making themselves the face of it, versus just creating a brand tone of voice and, I guess, a consistent image language with the images that they share and content threads which keep going? How much does someone need to step up and be the face of this, or can it be
when you do look at across the board, take Lakeland, they have, I can't remember her name, but it's like this older lady who basically reviews every single product before it goes on the shelves, and she's used very much in the blog and across social because people engage with a person. So I think having personas, having real names as Twitter accounts and real names, who's written this blog, having a real name there, using personal LinkedIn accounts is absolutely the way forward. And unless you're Coca-Cola or a big brand name that you don't need to do that for.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you look at someone like Virgin, they have a brand, but if you look at Richard Branson's personal following compared to, say, Virgin, then you can see that people are a lot more engaged in him and his life than necessarily talking to a social media department in a company.
Yeah.
So then their social becomes how to scale his voice, because he doesn't want to spend all day on Twitter, and obviously he doesn't. So how to scale his voice effectively to get the maximum reach. I want to talk a bit about conversations on social, because pretty much with every social channel, conversations are rewarded with better visibility. Whether it's Facebook, when someone comments on a post, it starts to be seen by their friends and their network, and then Facebook gives that post more visibility because it's starting to get engagement. Whatever channel you're on, conversations are rewarded. What are some of the best ways that you've seen for companies to start conversations with their audience?
Again, similarly to what I've said, that this is about treating this online social as if you were offline. So how would you engage with someone in a high street, on a shop floor, in a street? And or even in a networking group, how would you engage? You walk into a room with 1,000 people. You're not going to walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Jonny Ross. Here's my business card. Come and buy from me." If that happens, people are just going to turn away, and you're going to find yourself on your own in the corner of the room. So it's about understanding, when you walk into a networking room of 1,000 people, how would you talk to them? And ultimately, you would start talking to one or two people. You'd very much get on their wavelength, and you'd start having a conversation. The beauty of online is that you can talk to multiple people at the same time, but you still have to get on their wavelength, and you still have to talk, communicate, engage, have conversation. It's a two-way street, and it's doing that, but online. So for me, social is just a natural. There's no difference for me. I have this very clear in my mind, that social is just no different. The issue becomes that most people don't approach social like that and see it as this free form of advertising, and just shout, "Come and buy this," and people will come and flock and buy it. And so it's about being relatable. It's about using the audience, asking the audience. You referred to millennials earlier, and ultimately, if you start looking at that age group, They want to be very much part of the brand. They want to be involved in the product development. They want to be involved in the service development. And so it's about going out and asking and saying, it's about talking. It's about asking questions to the audience and finding out what they want and what can help them, like you would ask people in a room questions. It's the same, just asking online. So it's lots of questions. It's lots of really understanding who you're talking to and what interests them. And it's about brand advocates as well, that can easily relate to your audience. And that might be whether it be through some kind of free product or testing product, or whether it be through existing customers. Using existing staff, I mean, a message from a CEO will reach so far, but the same message if staff are saying that message, if employees are saying that message, then the reach of that will be so much further and so much more trusted as well. So it's about having all employees involved in it. It's about having it very integrated internally, and it's about really understanding who you're talking to and making it really relevant, having conversation about what people want to talk about.
I guess you mentioned they're advocates, and I guess advocates can also be outside the company as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the things that we've been seeing huge traction with is running giveaways on social, but instead of having us or our clients run the giveaway, going to a blogger that has a high authority with a particular market and having them run the giveaway. And when they do that, the results are it's not even like 10x, it's like 20x, 30x. A really quick way to build a huge social following for a company is to get someone who's high authority, who has absolutely nothing to do with the company, talk about the product and run a giveaway with their audience. So I guess there's also this whole other outside group of people who would be really qualified and powerful advocates for our companies.
Yeah, and it's about tapping into those. And unfortunately, that is a difficult area as well, because there's a lot of people in that area that are purely after money. And so it's then well, okay, how much are you going to pay me to do that? And then what happens is that the sign of a paycheck is more than the passion of the product. So they're then taking money for them talking about a product that they actually don't really care about. So it's a really difficult area that I think is becoming more difficult. But if you can find the right person with the right product, the scope is vast. So it's really about qualifying who that advocate could be.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the things which is going to be, it feels like a kind of breakthrough area over the next few years, because, most companies, they're thinking about social and who are they following? They're following Starbucks or Coca-Cola or whatever. And yet you've got people posting, you've got 16-year-olds posting videos on Facebook or Instagram, and they're getting a couple of million views in an hour. That's the real social growth, isn't it? There's something there which Coca-Cola and Starbucks, it's not even on their radar. They don't have that sort of relationship with their audience. And I wonder if there'll be a breakthrough where brands start to learn from those behaviors from the millennial influencers and start to kind of adopt some of their methods to do this stuff, because that could get really interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it. And I think some of the clever ones are already tapping into it. Yeah, and I think live streaming has made it a really big difference as well recently.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about tools and how to use these different techniques, and also how to measure ROI from social media.
Interested in learning more about digital marketing and want to access the latest ninja strategies? The Exposure Ninja blog is where we share some of our coolest stuff. So if you want to see behind the scenes of some real-life marketing campaigns, find out what's working for us on the front line, and keep up to date with the latest in digital marketing, head over to exposureninja.com/blog. We update it regularly, at least twice a week. So if you want to learn more about websites, SEO, pay-per-click, social, Facebook ads, or anything else digital marketing, then head over and subscribe at exposureninja.com/blog.
Welcome back. So, Jonny, we're all busy. Unless a company has a dedicated social media team, it's unlikely that someone is going to be sat there on Twitter all day, every day, doing this stuff in real time, interacting and all of that sort of stuff. So we'll talk about the kind of level of automation of a campaign later, but what are your favorite tools to manage social media campaigns effectively?
Excel. It sounds daft, doesn't it? You're expecting me to say some fabulous online tool. But do you know what? There's nothing wrong with a bit of Excel. I think that's a great way to sort of just start formulating your thoughts ultimately, and how you're gonna have these different conversations with different personas, and how you're gonna plan. So for me, the biggest thing is going back a step and coming up with some kind of editorial calendar, stroke marketing calendar. So it's about thinking of all the different events or things across the year. You know, I think that people, again, they have this assumption that the tool is going to do all the work, but that's not really how it happens. So for me, it's about having an amazing calendar that you can then be strategic from. So it's a really simple way of putting a calendar together. Get an Excel, well, first of all, a list. So nothing more than a piece of paper and a pen or a Word document, and a list of things and dates. What's over the next 12 months? What events are there in our calendar? What events are there in our industry? What events are there in our target audience's industry? So if you want to do work with schools, what events are in their calendar? Let's get them written down. What promotions have we got over the next 12 months? What marketing things have we sort of already thought of? Have we got any new product launches or service launches? Are there any new films that are coming out on the cinema, or any new TV series that are coming out over the next 12 months that relate to our products or services? If there are, then let's write them down. Are there any sporting events, any charity campaigns over the next 12 months that relate to our products or services, or more importantly, our audience? Let's write them down. You know, we all are familiar with Father's Day and Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. If it fits with our products and services, then we need to be talking about that at the right time again. So you get this big list. You then get an Excel sheet. You categorize it. So you've got January to December going across the top. Going down the left-hand side, you've got the different types of things we've just talked about. And you populate it, and you typically find that you'll have 4 or 5 topics in each month. And what this does is it gives you a really clear topic for each week of the year, so that there's a big sporting event in September, and that's what you're going to be talking about. If it relates to your product, services, and target audience, or it might be to show passion, because really a way to get people to engage with you is to show a bit of realism, and showing realism. A great way to demonstrate that is by showing your own passions and your own personalities. So Excel is the starting point. You then have this January to December, and all the different events. You then create another sheet, and in that sheet, it's going into detail. So week 2 of February, we know it's Valentine's Day, but let's put a bit more detail in. And there's lots of different columns you could have. Everything from who's the target audience, what's the product, so any keywords, any deadlines, are there any particular resources we're going to get for this. And having that plan can make such a big difference. Managing social, my favorite tool is Sprout Social. So we've used Hootsuite, TweetDeck, and all multitude of tools. For physically managing social, we find Sprout Social ticks a ton of boxes. It allows us to schedule, although that's not always the best thing to do, but in a lot of cases, there are good reasons to schedule. So it allows us to schedule. It allows us to get some really in-depth reporting, and we use that to then report to our clients as well. And overall, it's a very easy to use tool across the team. So that would be my probably number one social management tool.
You mentioned their scheduling, and I think it's worth talking about that a little bit. I have this theory that every social network has a strange and slightly dangerous relationship with automation and scheduling. Because on the one hand, without that stuff, many brands and companies would struggle to post consistently throughout the day. So on the one hand, it's good because it allows the network to be busy, which keeps people coming back. On the other hand, every social network seems to have this phase where it gets bogged down by fully automated bot accounts, and you kind of get to a stage now where you follow someone and then they automatically follow you back and send you a direct message, and at that stage the value in the network seems to decline a little bit. So there must be a sweet spot that companies who are using social can get to between having something that's fully automated and comes across as just this kind of sausage machine pumping out content 24/7 versus something that is all manual. How do people find that balance?
Yeah, well, it is about finding a balance, and I think it's as simple as that, really. So full automation is a really bad idea, and no automation, no scheduling, I think is really difficult. And I think the biggest reason, the two biggest reasons it's difficult is time/availability, but also that strategic plan of what you're going to be talking about. So without having that plan and scheduling in a way, it's difficult to remember that the right thing to be talking about today is Valentine's Day, for example. There's absolutely a balance. And I completely get that, and that's why I was cautious when I used the word. So it's about having, you've got to have a real-time conversation, real-time tweets. Is your audience small business or larger? Is it quite mixed, or what's the
mostly small and medium?
Okay, so I think the biggest issue that small to medium business have is that they don't have necessarily someone dedicated to this all the time, or there is one person responsible, but they're not available all the time. So, for example, I was talking about Asda, for those not in the UK, Walmart. So Asda, I was talking to the head of social, and what he says is that they put a post out at 3:00 on a weekday. I should mention that their audience is typically 30-year-old mothers. If they put a post out at 3:00 on a weekday, if it doesn't get 100 likes within 60 seconds, then typically the post is crap and they delete it. And the reason for that is at 3:00 on a weekday, typically 30-year-old mothers are in the playground waiting to pick up their kids with their eyes completely looking at their phone, because all they're doing is playing on Facebook and texting. And typically conversations in the playground are not like they used to be. It's a very good example of how scheduling can make a big difference, because if you're not available at 3:00 on a Wednesday, you're missing your best opportunity. So scheduling absolutely has its place, but it's about ensuring that it's always real and that it's always meaningful, and that there is always that, if you can't tweet at 3:00, then you are there later in the day or earlier in the day having real conversation and replying to any interaction that there may have been at that time, for example.
Yeah, I completely agree. We kind of tend to use scheduling as the absolute basics to keep the posts active when people are going to be watching. So for us, we find that weekend mornings is quite an active time. So people just waking up and checking their Twitter or whatever.
Yeah,
some sort of motivational thing just to kind of get them set for the weekend. So you might not have anyone online at that time, but just good to have something that goes out. But then, yeah, if you get any communication around that, then it's really good to have a person jump on and just kind of answer those conversations, I guess. So yeah, you're right, it has to be a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's difficult.
Okay, so let's close up by talking about some tracking and measurement. So in your opinion, what are the key metrics that people should be tracking on social?
Well, again, it goes back to who's the audience, what are the goals, what we're trying to achieve, and it's about identifying all of that right at the beginning. Because we could say, oh yeah, we've got 100,000 followers, it's amazing. Actually, we just need to sell. We've decided that we need to increase our revenue by 100 grand. That's typically going to be 10 people, because They, on average, spend 10 grand each, and they are typically the HR directors of corporate agencies. So actually, going back to the goals, we only needed to speak to 10 HR directors. We didn't need 100,000 followers on Twitter. You see the disparity. And so it's about understanding, well, what are the goals and what we're trying to achieve? And if we have that very clear right at the beginning, then it is very easy to measure what we're trying to achieve. Now, if you think, well, okay, we typically sell to consumers, we sell to anyone and everyone, which again, I would challenge highly. It's about triangulating data. So you could have this 100,000 followers, but let's triangulate it. How many people talk back to us? How many people retweet? How many people like? How many people click on links? How many people, when they do click on links, do we have everything linked to Google Analytics? So do we then look at how many people have clicked, but then what do they do on our website? How many people go onto our website and then fill out a contact form or make an inquiry or make a purchase? So it's having all of that data and triangulating it all to understand how meaningful these 100,000 followers might be. Because ultimately, if they come onto the site and they only spend maybe they're only, we'd look at things like time that they've spent on the site, how many pages they've looked at, have they, more importantly, triggered any goals? What are the goals when someone gets to the website? What are we trying to get them to achieve? And have they achieved that? Have they triggered that? And it's about understanding all of that data to then understand whether you are getting a return. Now, the only thing to say is that if you go back 20 years and you look at advertising and you look at advertising in the newspaper, the magazine, boards of directors were never asking for a categoric clear what's the return on investment, because it was very difficult to track, and there was no, it was a branding exercise. The moment social and digital's come along, this need for an exact return on investment has suddenly become the case. But just like any form of advertising, people need to see things maybe 7 times before they make a purchase. So social is just one of those 7 points, really. And so it's difficult it's unfair to label social and say, well, there has to be a return on it. Because 20 years ago, boards were not forcing their marketing directors to have a return on an advert that had gone into a newspaper or magazine. There's been a big shift from a tracking point of view, but there's also been a massive shift from an expectation point of view. And I think that expectation shift is more than it should be. But it's going back to how to measure. It's about triangulation. That's the most important thing. Being able to look at a number of different tools, a number of different metrics to try and look at how meaningful that ultimately the activity has been.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the point about the internet versus old media, I think is really interesting, because you're right, aren't you? Pretty much every channel that we use online is a direct response medium. It's most Google ads and all of that, they're designed to turn someone into a lead or a customer. So it's much more like say an old mail order piece where they'd key the ads and they'd know exactly who was coming back from each ad group, as opposed to something like TV where there's no really, really difficult to measure ROI. You can look at traffic spikes during ad breaks or something, but it's super fluffy, isn't it? And the same with magazine and newspaper ads, unless it's the ad in the back of the Times on the Saturday afternoon with the order form with a little key in the bottom is really tough to track. I think for me, that's one of the most exciting things about the internet, is that these large brands are forced to become direct response marketers instead of just the kind of old school brand builders, which is, I guess, brand building is still a viable thing online, and I guess with social it's inevitable that is a main goal. But I think that the brand building advertisers have been getting away with doing poor quality work or low ROI work for too long, and I think their time is coming.
Yeah, that's a fair point too.
And I suppose also the social networks themselves don't really help with the tracking and measuring, do they? Because the kind of endorphin kick that you feel when you see the notification number on something like Facebook or Twitter can mean that the tendency is to optimize a campaign around just pure engagement. And we've seen it with some of our clients who'll just reduce their social campaigns to sharing memes and jokes and just pure entertainment, just because that's what gets the best engagement. And as you say, they totally lose sight of the goal. They never look in analytics and say, what's an average social visitor to our website worth and how many of them are we getting? It's just all about, well, we've got 300 likes this month. But I guess that's what Facebook's rewarding, because Facebook gives you those stats. It's kind of what it's the language that it's trying to encourage its audience to think in, really.
Yeah, no, really true. I mean, all they're after is creating something that's engaging on the platform at the time. And totally agree. Totally. Yeah.
Cool. So let's wrap up then. So finally, do you have any favorite dashboard or measurement tools that you use? Obviously, you've mentioned analytics. I'm guessing there might be some Excel in there as well.
There is a bit, yeah. I like looking at Majestic SEO. I like looking at Moz, Open Site Explorer. I like looking at the metrics of those. And I also used Twitonomy a lot, which is...
don't know that one.
So it's Google Analytics for Twitter, and it's a great platform to be able to analyze other people's accounts, not only your own. And I think that there's some quite good metrics in there as well, which helps you sort of benchmark and analyze. And Bitly as well. So again, it's about triangulation. So, for example, if we're tweeting, you were talking about memes and jokes. If we're tweeting third-party content, so linking to, a BBC article or a Guardian article or whatever it might be, putting it through Bitly first enables us to track how many visitors or users have clicked that link. And that can be really insightful to understand the type of content that we can get users to click. So it's a really simple tool. Most people, everyone's heard of it, and it's like, well, why are you mentioning that? Actually, but for measuring third party, it's amazing. So triangulating, going back to that, it's about grabbing all this data together and then making sense of it, instead of just looking at the one figure, we've got 3,000 followers, we must be doing well, type of thing.
Yeah. Oh, I love Bitly. Such an underrated social tool. I mean, you're posting the same link through a few different channels and in a few different contexts, and it's really difficult to get a feel for which of those channels, which of those messages are resonating and getting you the clicks in analytics, isn't it? Because all analytics is going to show you is, you've had this link from Twitter or Facebook or whatever. Whereas Bitly will show you've had 100 clicks on this specific link, which is, and that's the one that you used in that piece on Tuesdays.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Jonny, this has been fantastic. How do people find out about you? Where do they need to follow you?
JR Consultancy on Twitter or johnnyross.com, and feel free to tweet any questions and connect on LinkedIn.
Fab. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and tune in next week for more digital marketing.